Hello! It's time for another reading challenge, and I'm actually pretty nervous about this one because it's a lot of reading to get done. I'd ideally like to do all of this reading this week, but one of these books in particular is quite the chunker, so I don't know if that's going to work, but I'll do it for however long it takes. The other reason I'm kind of nervous about this is because this series is really quite loved, and you already know what this challenge is from the title of this video, so I don't know why I'm dragging it out. I'm going to be reading the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. Like I said, I would ideally like to read this in a week, but A Court of Wings and Ruin looks like a pretty long book. I'm actually not sure how long any of these books are, so let's take them out of this box set and find out. So of course we're going to start with A Court of Thorns and Roses, which comes in at 416 pages. Then we have A Court of Mist and Fury, which is 624 pages. And then A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is 699 pages. So these books are actually a lot longer than I realised they were. It's not really the length I'm so worried about, actually. I mean, I think it's unlikely that I'll be able to finish all three of these in a week, so this challenge might have to stretch a little bit, but I like big books, so that's not necessarily a problem. I am interested to know though, is this the full series or are there going to be more books? I know that there are short stories, A Court of Frost and Starlight, is that right? I'm such an ACOTAR noob, so I don't know anything. I've heard that these books are pretty spicy, shall we say, in terms of the level of sexual content, which I'm fine with because I enjoy reading smut, and I haven't read any new smut for quite a long time. In fact, I haven't read any smut in general for quite a long time, but let's get into it, I guess. I've put on my red jumper so that I would match the first book, and now I'm going to get back into my dressing gown, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, and start ACOTAR. I do actually have the audiobook from Scribed, so since it's quite late on Sunday, well, it's 5 PM on Sunday, I've spent most of the day filming and editing, etc. So I'm going to use the audiobook to help me get started, and yeah, I guess we'll get into this. It is quite a bit later now, 9 o'clock in fact, and I thought I would give you a reading update. I've made some significant progress. I'm on page 138 of ACOTAR, and I'm enjoying it so far. I had somehow forgotten, even though I knew that it was a fae story, I'd forgotten that when I started it, but it becomes apparent like immediately. So I'm actually quite enjoying that aspect of it. I'm interested to learn more about the world. I do find it interesting. I've been looking at the map of Prithian, which is on this side here, and it basically looks exactly like the UK, which is interesting. As somebody who lives in England, I just find that amusing, but I'm enjoying it so far. I like Feyre, and I'm enjoying Tamlin and Lucian as well. It's very fast-paced, which I like. A little bit of world building, but not too much info dumping, which is also nice. I feel like we're going to learn about the Fae and Fae politics quite gradually, which I always appreciate with world building. I prefer it that way, in fact, to discover things as the story progresses. And I mean, I can very much tell that it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so I can definitely tell exactly where the story is going, but I don't really mind that, and the audiobook is good, in case you were wondering about that. Okay, so it's Monday evening, I'm home from work, I've had dinner, and I have done quite a lot of reading today. So I'm currently on chapter 30, so I've read this portion, I have this portion left to go. I'm on page 262, and just to remind you, there are 416 pages in this book, so around 140 pages left. I'm hoping I'm going to finish this one tonight so that I can start A Court of Mist and Fury probably tomorrow. I am enjoying it. I have to say, I don't think that the relationship is super well built up. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so it's not quite insta-love, but it's a little bit in that direction, which I'm not a huge fan of. I think my problem is when characters say I love you too early, and I think that this book definitely falls foul of that in some places. I'm sort of thinking to myself, do you actually love them yet though? Or do you just really, really like them? So I'm kind of in two minds about that, but I do like the characters and I am enjoying the story and I am enjoying the character progression. So I'm not going to hold that too much against it, but that's something that I don't love so far. Also, the sexual tension, if we can call it that, is a little bit cringy. I think what it is that this is supposed to be new adult, or it was meant to be new adult, even though new adult never really kicked off. So it's kind of the bridge between young adult fade to black and adult full-on smut, read the whole lot. And you can tell that if you've read smutty books before, then this is just a little bit cringy in the sexual tension department, if you ask me. Now, that's because it's kind of a mixture of the long lingering looks that you get in young adult with the focus on materialistic outward perceptions of a person that you get in most smutty novels. So yeah, I think it's a little bit awkward. I think that the sex scene wasn't quite as graphic as some books that I've read, but more so than a young adult. So it is very much in that middle ground, which is perhaps I should have anticipated that, but I didn't. I was expecting like full on smut, which it's not. That's fine, but I am finding it a little bit cringy. I don't know if that's just me, or whether it's just because I'm used to either nothing or everything in a romance book. I'm going to go ahead and finish this now. So I have finished ACOTAR. I'm currently using the light on my phone to light this particular shot, and it's kind of blinding me, so I'm going to make this quick and give you a proper review of my thoughts tomorrow, because it's currently quite late. It's 25 to 11 and I need to go to bed because I need to go to work tomorrow. But I have finished ACOTAR and I enjoyed it, actually. The last section, the section that I read tonight, I actually really enjoyed. It kind of uses my favourite trope, which is kind of a twist on the competition trope, which I always really enjoy. So that was really fun. I feel like the pacing of the story was good, but it didn't really have a very clear beginning, middle and end. It sort of had an arc and then another arc within that arc, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it does, it's very late. But I did enjoy it. I have some theories about what is going to happen next in series. I'm really interested to see where things are going to go with Reese in particular, because I've heard people talk about Rhysand and I can't remember in what context people have spoken about him. Hi! So I'm just about to paint my nails. I'm just reshaping them now. So I thought now would be a good time to talk about the ACOTAR series. And what I've realised over the last sort of less than 24 hours is I'm not really going to be able to do this video without talking about spoilers, because otherwise I'm not really going to be able to discuss my feelings about books 2 and 3 at all, other than at a surface level. So it is with regret that I am making the decision to make this video spoiler filled, which is not something I like to do on my channel because I feel like it's unfair to people who haven't read the book and want to enjoy the video, because they then can't watch it if they want to read the book and don't want to be spoiled for the book before they've read it. But I feel like I just can't do this video justice without talking about spoilers. So to achieve what I want to achieve in this video, I need to discuss spoilers. So from this point in the video onwards, there will be spoilers. So I have read the first book, ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's always really comforting, I find, to read retellings because you know exactly where the story's going. Nothing's going to surprise you. It's just new characters and a new kind of setup, and it's all really enjoyable. And I did like that element of it. I liked knowing where things were going, but not how things were going to get to the place that they were going. I knew what the overall outcomes would be because I know the story of Beauty and the Beast, but I didn't know how we were going to get there. Feyre is a very typical YA character, even though this isn't a YA series. She comes off very much like your typical YA protagonist who's not like other girls and has to go out and be the man, and you know, that's all great and fine. I don't really see why a woman has to be like a man to be strong in literature, but that's just a whole other issue, so let's not go there. But I like Feyre. She's an interesting character. She's the youngest in her family and she looks after them because she feels like she has to, and because her mum had made her swear at the age of 8 years old to look after the rest of the family. Didn't say that to her husband, didn't say that to the 2 eldest daughters, no, said it to her 8-year-old as she was on her deathbed. So Feyre's mother is a little bit of a weirdo, but we never met her, so let's just move on from that. Feyre, at the beginning of the story, is a badass bitch and kills a wolf who she thinks is a wolf, but she kind of also thinks there's a good chance that this is a fae. But you know what? I don't care, because fae suck, so I'm gonna shoot this wolf and I'm not even going to bother trying to eat it. I'm just going to take its fur because that seems like a thing that I should do. So she's taken the wolf skin and she's looking after her family, and they don't really appreciate her and they don't really look after her. And then cut to, she's been kidnapped, I suppose, and taken to the land of the fae by a high lord, although she doesn't know that at the time, named Tamlin, which she also doesn't know at the time. And all she's trying to do, and I guess this is kind of Stockholm syndrome, I suppose, but all she's trying to do is leave her current captor's house, lands, whatever, and return to the family that treat her like shit. Even though her dad specifically told her, yeah, I know we treat you like shit, don't come back because you deserve better than what we give you and we don't deserve you. So all she's trying to do is get back to her family because of the oath that she made to her mum, who made her swear this oath while she was on her deathbed while her child was 8 years old, because that's not, you know, traumatic or anything. I've already spoken about this. We're moving on. Anyway, so Feyre is an interesting character. I do like her. She is, you know, somewhat bland, I think, for the majority of the first book. She's kind of just this very typical, I'm a strong person except that I'm not a strong person and I have motivations that don't really make a whole lot of sense, and we don't know enough about her at this time to really be able to see if that's, you know, a trauma response or what. But she really grows on me, and by the end of the first book I really like her. And as I mentioned in an earlier clip, I really enjoy the competition style trope towards the end of the first book. So now I'm into the second book. So I'm currently reading A Court of Mist and Fury, and I am currently on page 189. 87. Not bad considering I only started it this morning on my way to work. So I'm still reading and listening. Side note, I had downloaded the audiobooks for all 3 of these books straight away when I found them on Scribd. And you know what Scribd have done? I'm listening to book 2 at the moment, and they've gone, oh wait, by the way, now Court of Wings and Ruin, which is book 3 in the series, is now not available until the 1st of March. So I'm going to end up having to buy that one on Audible, which is fine, but I've heard this about Scribd, and it is incredibly annoying because I just don't buy that for some spooky coincidental reason that one has just gone out of availability. And it's not even like it's a new release. That book came out like what, a couple of years ago. Anyway, I find that a bit frustrating. Side note, one thing I do really like is that the characters, all of the characters, are deeply traumatized after the events of book 1. And they should be. The stuff that the characters went through, especially at the end of book 1, is pretty messed up. Like, especially Feyre, we actually saw everything that happened to her, and, you know, she had a piece of bone go through her arm. She was nearly crushed by flaming hot spikes because she can't read. She had to murder 2 innocent fae in cold blood, all to save Tamlin's life and the lives of the other fae who would be protected by Tamlin being freed of the curse that he's under, because of course he's the beast in this Beauty and the Beast retelling. But it's all on the basis that she loves him, but she's only known him for a very short time, and she kind of starts to come to that realization at the beginning of the 2nd book, or at least she is doing by the point that I've reached of this book so far, which I kind of get, but I do. So let's stay on the trauma point. Actually, let's stick with one train of thought. That's probably a good idea. So I like that realistic element of it. We also see Tamlin struggling with trauma. We see Rhysand struggling with trauma. It's not as impactful, or it is as impactful. It's just we don't really know the full extent of the causes of their trauma because they've been alive for over 500 years and have been through the last 50 years under Amarantha's reign of terror and curses and treating everybody like playthings. And we haven't seen all of that, so we don't really fully understand the depths of the other characters' PTSD, but we kind of do with Feyre because we've learnt a lot about her past, and then we've seen her firsthand go through all of the trauma at the end of A Court of Thorns and Roses. So we're able to understand her trauma and the depths of it a little bit better, and I like that Sarah J Maas didn't just move on to happy fairyland where everything's rosy and golden and Tamlin and Feyre are getting married and they're very happy and everything's great, because it's not great and everything's really crap and they've been through some real shit and it's awful and it affects them, and that's realistic and I appreciate that. What I don't appreciate though is this relationship that is starting to form between Feyre and Rhysand. Now, I'm not saying that Rhysand is a bad character. He's definitely a grey character, but I actually really like him. We don't get a lot of him in ACOTAR, especially not at the beginning. He doesn't really appear until way over halfway through the book, I think. And then we only really get a little bit of him towards the end of the book, but I didn't really necessarily take a massive disliking to him. Tamlin obviously dislikes him, so we're supposed to, but we're never really given a reason why Rhys is not to be trusted, and I could see that he was very, very grey as characters go, but he hasn't necessarily done anything particularly bad, especially not to Feyre. In fact, he saves her life kind of in a very Fae way, but he's Fae. Can we really blame him for that? So I don't dislike Rhys, but after After everything Feyre's gone through to save Tamlin, she really just going to give up on that relationship so quickly and start something with Tamlin? I mean, with Rhys. At this point, she's not. She's... I've got to the point in the book where she is living at the night court with Rhys after Tamlin made the very, very bad decision to lock her in his manor while he went off to do his High Lord duties. Now, I kind of understand why he did that, because he watched the woman he loves literally die in front of his eyes for him. He heard her neck snap, he held her dead body and thought that she was gone and that she'd done it for him and his people. And that's traumatic. That is horrendous. It's awful. And so I understand the protective instinct. But what's really frustrating me about these two right now is that they just need to have a conversation about their trauma. And I get that it's not that easy, okay? Like, this is very personal stuff and it's really, really difficult. But they're engaged, you know, they're going to get married. And I think that you need to be able to talk about this kind of thing with the people that you love. And I mean, Feyre is telling Rhys a lot more about her feelings and her trauma than she's told Tamlin. And I get that she doesn't want to be a burden on him, but it is deeply, deeply frustrating to me that the problems in their relationship are being caused by the fact that they're not being open and honest with each other. He is not being honest about the fact that I cannot bear the thought of anything happening to you, and the only way I can cope with that is by being overly protective. I mean, he's said that a lot more clearly than she has expressed to him. I need my freedom. I've killed innocent people. I don't feel like a good person anymore. I don't feel like I'm worthy of you. And I can't cope with who I am and what I am, and I'm not me anymore. And I need space to figure out who I am, and I need you to support me in that. She's not putting that out there, and I don't even think it's that she hasn't identified that those are problems, because she has. She's just not sharing them with him for some reason, and it's not even clear on the page what that reason is. And I find that frustrating, because she has sacrificed so much for Tamlin and for her relationship with him, and then she's just going to run away and give up on it. And I get that it's a hard thing, but I feel like they both deserve more than that. So I am a little bit frustrated. And while I do like Rhys, and I can see why Rhys would be a good match for her, it's 200 pages after the events at the end of the first book, and I just feel like it's a massive, massive disservice to both Feyre and Tamlin for her to just give up on that relationship at this early stage. So that's where I'm at right now. I am really interested to see the relationship between Feyre and Mor develop. So Mor is a character that I feel like Feyre needs in her life, someone who's going to push her to talk about the shit that she is dealing with and that she is pushing down. So I think that relationship is going to be a really good one, and I'm looking forward to seeing that develop. But yeah, I'm at this point, my main feeling is nervousness. I'm just very, very anxious about what is going to happen between Feyre and Tamlin and Feyre and Rhys. And I feel like we're heading in a love triangle direction, and I don't love that. I don't love the love triangle thing at all, but I feel like that's where we're going. Right now it's a love-hate friendship, but I feel like we're heading towards a hate to love romance and a first love romance, and this person, Tamlin, gave me love and attention for the first time in my life because my family are shit, and now there's this person, Reese, who challenges me and is really, really interesting and wants the best for me, and I used to hate him, but actually maybe he's not so bad. So I love Tamlin because it's Tamlin and I sacrifice so much for him, but Reese is really interesting and really hot, so maybe I should go for him. I don't like the love triangle thing, and I don't like that that's the direction we seem to be going in, so I'm very, very concerned, and I'm gonna stop blathering at you now. Okay, so as anticipated, it's been a while since I last checked in with you. I got home from work super late last night, so I wasn't able to check in. It's now Thursday night and I have finished A Court of Mist and Fury, and I really liked it. That's the starting point. So last time I checked in with you, I wasn't sure how I felt about the fact that Feyre had left Tamlin without ever really having had a discussion with him about her feelings and his feelings and how they were both doing, and it was all very open-ended and there wasn't much decision making going on there. And then not too long after that, Feyre made clear in her own mind, and then shortly thereafter made clear by sending a letter to Tamlin, that they were over. And I was kind of surprised by that because it seemed to happen really, really quickly. It went from being really uncertain, are they broken up? Is she going to go back to him? What's going on? And then all of a sudden it was just over. And I still kind of wish that they had had a conversation at least, so that she could explain to him what it was that she was struggling with, and so that he could explain to her what it was that he was struggling with. But I do get why she left. I mean, he locked her in the house while she was suffering from PTSD from being a prisoner, so that wasn't great on his part. And as Feyre started to reflect on their relationship, I was able to see all of the problems in that relationship, and it actually is really interesting how Sarah J. Maas managed to convey the relationship as a positive one and through very rose-tinted spectacles in the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, whilst in this book we started to actually see everything for what it was, and the protectiveness that Tamlin was exhibiting was actually controlling. And instead of looking out for her and protecting her as he said he was doing, he actually was just exerting his control to get what he wanted out of that relationship. So it was very interesting to me how the perspective was completely changed in book 2, and I thought that was really well done. And then, as I said before, I really like Rhysand as a character. He is grey, but he has reasons for being grey, and we start to learn more about his past. We start to learn that Tamlin and his family killed Rhysand's mother and sisters. We learn more about his time with Amarantha and how he was essentially a sex slave, and he had to play into that role to get as much control over his life as he could, but he didn't really have any control, so he's deeply damaged as well. And at the end of the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, there's this scene where Rhysand is leaving after Amarantha's been killed, and he's speaking with Feyre, and he smells something, and I was convinced at that point that it was going to be that Feyre was pregnant with Tamlin's child, because there's this whole Fae thing that conception is really difficult and children are rare and precious, and that's what I thought it was. So then when it's revealed that actually it's because Feyre is Rhysand's mate, I was really surprised. I was not expecting that at all, and it really adds a different perspective to a lot of things. And I think it's the kind of thing that if you went back and reread the first book and the second book, you'd notice a lot of things, because we finally, after a little bit of Feyre spending time to get her head around this situation. I didn't love that she sort of ran off when she found out, because clearly Rhysand kept it from her, so she didn't feel like she was being forced into anything. But I can also see why she would be upset to be lied to again, especially since Rhys promised not to lie to her. But I think once she'd calmed down, she didn't really like herself for making that decision either. So I was really proud of her when she rescued Rhys, and then when she ran off and left him after finding out that he was her mate, that really bothered me, especially because I'd just got over her running out on Tamlin, and now she was running out on Rhys, and they just sort of started kindling a relationship. But then when they're reunited, Rhys finally tells his story, and so we start to see the snippets of what actually happened from his perspective. So I think knowing that now, it would be interesting to reread Feyre's perspective, knowing what was actually going on in Rhys's mind throughout all of that. So I think that would be interesting, and I did really appreciate that added layer of depth to their relationship. It really did remind me quite a lot of the bonding that happens in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. So if you're not familiar with that series, it's by J.R. Ward, and it follows the Black Dagger Brotherhood, who are vampires, but they're the sort of warrior race of vampires whose job is to protect the rest of the vampire community from their enemy race called the Lessers, who are essentially like vampire assassin undead things. It's very, very complicated. And in the Black Dagger Brotherhood, each book follows a different brother, but the whole thing is that vampires in that universe bond with their mate, and it's a very, very similar kind of relationship to the mate relationship in this universe. So I kind of liked that because it reminded me of a series that I really, really love. So that was nice too. And Rhysand and Feyre just make a lot of sense together now that I've got that sort of perspective of it, and I do really like them together. So the ending, I actually really liked the ending of this one. So Feyre pretends to snap out of her feelings for Rhys and go back to Tamlin, but their relationship, Feyre and Rhys's relationship, is so strong that he knows exactly what she's doing and he just plays along with it, and they're on completely the same page. There's no angst there, and I really like that, because that can happen quite a lot in these kinds of books, is that the relationship becomes the source of the angst. And I think that's why I like fantasy romance so much, because you can use the fantasy plot lines to create all of that angst and all of that drama, and then the relationships can just be an enjoyable part of the story. So I really liked that. What I will say is I was expecting a lot more smut out of this series, with how much everybody talks about how much sex is in this series. I mean, it amped up a little bit in the last 200 pages of the book, but this is a 624 page book, and there were maybe 3 sex scenes, and there were only 2 of them that were really explicit, only one that was properly full sex, full detail. So yeah, it's definitely not a smut series, at least not my perspective of what smut is. This is a fantasy series with some graphic sex scenes. That's my take on it. When you've read series like the Black Dagger Brotherhood and the Lords of the Underworld, this is really, really tame. Those books, they have sex all the way through and all the detail, and think about the main sex scene in this book between Feyre and Rhys, and that's all the way through those series, multiple times. So, and there's a lot more sexual tension in those books, which I can't fault this book for not having that, because it is fantasy. It's just I don't know, from what I've heard about the series, I wasn't expecting quite so much fantasy, which is a nice surprise for me because I like reading fantasy. So I am looking forward to reading the third concluding book, and I will be starting that tomorrow now. Just want to talk about some of the side characters for a bit. So as I said before, I really like Moore as a friend for Feyre, and I'm hoping that we will potentially get to see more of Moore in book 3, and I'm hoping we're going to find out more about Amren as well. I also really like the Cassiel, Morrigan, Azriel dynamic, because I think Azriel thinks that something is going on between Morrigan and Cass, and I don't think it is. Well, it's not. It's definitely not. They had sex once, and like they were, you know, kind of using each other at the time, and it was just a one-time thing, and like whatever. But I feel like Cass is going to end up with Nesta. There's clear vibes between the two of them, and then hopefully Morrigan and Azriel will get their shit together and they'll end up together. I'm hoping that Amren is going to find her way back to her people, although I have a sneaking suspicion that it's a very small possibility that Amren is going to get her own like little spin-off series, because I know that there's meant to be another 3 books in this universe, and I don't know anything about those, but I wonder if that might have like more to do with Amren, because her whole past is very, very mysterious. So potentially, and she's like, she drinks blood. Is she like a vampire? That I would be into that. So I don't know what's going to happen with Amren, but Azriel and Morrigan for sure. Feyre and Rhys, if either of them die, I'm going to be pissed. I am going to be so pissed. And then Tamlin. What do I want to happen to Tamlin? I mean, you know, he is controlling, but he's not necessarily a bad guy. He just has some shit to work on. Am I right? So, I don't know. I'm interested to see what Sarah J. Maas does with Tamlin's character. And I guess Court of Wings and Ruin will deal with this impending war. Feyre's going to be spying on Tamlin. Lucian kind of knows about it, but he can't say anything about it because he wants to get Elaine back, and Feyre can help that to happen. Feyre and Rhys have this sort of secret, quieter bond that nobody knows about, or at least nobody on Feyre's side of things really knows anything about. And then there's this book, and Feyre put the pieces together, so does that mean that it's woken the things that Amren warned about? Are we going to have to deal with those too? I mean, I kind of saw that coming as soon as she said, don't put the pieces of the book together. I was like, well, clearly that's going to happen, and it did. So I'm kind of interested to see what the fallout of that is going to be. I think there's a lot to cover in book 3. It's Saturday at last, and I'm on page 142 of A Court of Wings and Ruin, and I'm hoping to get through the rest of this today. Ideally, it's 699 pages, so I've got 557 pages left, which is a lot, so it might not happen. What is going on with my hair? It is wet, so it's kind of a little bit wonky. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to ignore it. So, 142 pages in. I am liking how badass Feyre is in this book. She's kind of got to this point now where she's like, do you know what? I don't even care anymore. I'm going to do what I want. I'm powerful and I'm not going to take any shit. And so she's like getting back at Tamlin for everything that he did, and she's being really sneaky, and that's really cool. And then we've just reunited with Rhys, which was really sweet. I really enjoyed that. I like that Sarah J. Maas didn't drag it out too much, because a lot of the time when that kind of thing happens in a book, it gets dragged out for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages before the two characters get reunited, and we didn't do that. Feyre just got in, did what she needed to do, and then got out and went home, which I appreciated. So we're now back with Rhys and everybody else in Valaris. We're on part 2 of the book. I don't know how many parts there are, but I'm not really sure where things are going to go now. I mean, we've got the war coming up, but beyond that, I don't really know what to expect. So I'm going to read a bit, get a little bit further in, and then potentially check in with you when I've got maybe another 100 or 200 pages read. I don't want to check in too often because I am aware that the footage for this is already very, very long. This is going to be a bit of a nightmare to edit, I think. But anyway, let's get into it. Right, it is nearly 9:30 on Sunday night. Yes, you heard me right, Sunday night. And I have now finished A Court of Wings and Ruin, which means that I've finished the ACOTAR trilogy. I'm not including A Court of Frost and Starlight in this challenge. I might read that at some point, but not in this video. And basically yesterday I had a headache, I was really tired, I ended up napping and doing a whole load of other stuff that didn't involve as much reading as I was hoping, so that's why I haven't finished this until today. And also a big part of that is that I did actually find this one the least interesting in the trilogy. It was a little bit slower in pace, and the main plot line of the story is preparing for and fighting in a war, which is not a plot line that I particularly tend to enjoy in general anyway, especially not when it takes up that amount of screen time, page time, you know what I mean. So not my favourite in the trilogy, but I feel like there's still space for stuff to be wrapped up. So the main plot lines were wrapped up and we got a little bit of closure with certain things, but like for example we find out that Moore is a lesbian and that's why she doesn't want to be with Asriel, but she hasn't told him that yet by the end of the trilogy, and it's sort of hinted at that she will tell him eventually, but we don't get to see that closure. We don't get to see what Amren is like now that she's just an ordinary high fae. We don't know what's going to happen with Nesta, who's grieving over the loss of their father. We don't know if Elaine and Lucian are going to end up together. We know that Feyre and Rhys are going to go off searching for the creature whose name I can't remember and who I probably can't pronounce the name of it anyway. So there are lots of things that a further trilogy could deal with, but it's enough closure that it doesn't feel too open, if that makes sense. I was really scared for a minute there that Rhys was going to be dead forever, so I was really glad that Feyre fixed that. I was almost a little bit disappointed when Amren came back, not because I want Amren to be gone, but because it feels like the only real consequence of war was the loss of their father, who had not been in any of the books since the first one and who wasn't a character we were particularly attached to anyway. So it's not as impactful, but then I feel like romance fantasy, I don't mind that so much, and I like happy endings. I'm very glad that Rhys isn't actually dead. And yeah, I liked the trilogy. I did think that it was good. I think that out of the 3, A Court of Mist and Fury was my favourite book, with A Court of Wings and Ruin being my least favourite. Not because I thought it was a bad book, but just because some of the main plot of the story is a story arc that I don't tend to enjoy in general. Although I did really enjoy that first section where Feyre was manipulating things in the Spring Court to bring Tamlin down a peg, and I enjoyed sort of the ending where things are kind of wrapped up and all the roses are painted, but that middle section where they're preparing for war and all that kind of thing, I could have had that a whole lot shorter than it was. But on the whole, I'm really glad that I read this trilogy. I really enjoyed myself. I do see what all the hype is about. I still don't agree that it's particularly smutty. The second book probably had the most amount of smut, and even that was pretty tame compared to some stuff I've read in the past, so can't agree that it's a smutty trilogy, but I did still very much enjoy it. So if you've managed to make it to this point in this reading challenge video, well done, because it's very, very long. I've already edited the remainder of the footage, which came in at around 40 minutes, so this is going to be about 45 to 50 minutes long, so it's a very, very long video. So if you're still here, thank you very much indeed. Leave me a little rose emoji so that I can show you the love for making it this far. And if you've read ACOTAR before, which if you've made it to this point in the video you probably have, let me know what you thought of it, and let me know if you enjoyed this kind of longer form reading challenge video, and if you want to set me any challenges then leave them down below as well. But that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks. Bye.